You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV Network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Hobson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and Bing.com, and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is AfterBuzz TV's Once Upon a Time After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's Once Upon a Time After Show.
AfterBuzz's after TV show. AfterBuzz's after show for Once Upon a Time in Wonderland. Bing is for doing, and we're here doing the Once Upon a Time in Wonderland AfterBuzz TV show. I'm your host, Jacque Borowski, and with me is Tiona.
Hi, everyone. Tiona Hobson.
And I already forgot your name.
No, my name's Keetin Marchi, guys. Hi, nice to be with you.
And engineering the show tonight is Marisa.
Hello, everyone. Yep.
This music is really epic.
It is really epic.
I feel like going on a quest right now.
I know. So we start off with Alice going down or coming out of the rabbit hole, and we're going to talk a little bit more about timeline later on, but she appears to be in the 1865 Alice in Wonderland typical costume. And then later on, we see her in the asylum, and she's still wearing a kind of 1800s corset, and everybody looks pretty old-timey, not to mention the asylum itself is old-timey because we don't really send people to asylums in contemporary era. So I just assumed that this was
Amanda
also...
Bynes went, so no.
She went to modern-timey, rehab asylum. She didn't go to, old-timey walls are dripping and, the Dr. Evil people are looking over her.
It was almost like American Horror Story Asylum.
It was.
It reminded me
It
of.
was. Only a lot less terrifying.
Yeah, true story.
Yeah, and I will say, because the asylum is Bethlehem Asylum, and there is a Bethlehem Royal Hospital in England that is known, it's a famous mental hospital out there. So, fun fact for you there. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and history expert here.
Well, it's actually, thank you, Wikipedia. And it's on my phone right now. So, yeah, it was founded in 1247. That's a weird year to say. And it's it's a hospital for the treatment of mental illnesses in London, and it's moved from its original location a couple times, but it's Europe's first and oldest institution to specialize in mental illness.
Is it still open today?
The more you know.
The more you know. Yes, it is. I think. Well, no, actually, 1900 is where it says 1900 to present. So, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
I just kept thinking, wow, that's the the basement of the hospital in Storybrooke.
Yeah,
it probably is the same thing, and they just put a bunch of Dr. Evil looking menacing guys in there to.
Yeah, because they did say while they were shooting the pilot for this during last May, right when they had finished shooting Once Upon a Time, they did use a lot of the sets and just kind of refigure it for the pilot.
In the forest.
Yeah, they just kind of refigured it for the purpose of this because it's a pilot. You don't really know if you're getting picked up. Yeah. Don't know the budget.
Right.
So well, it was fun to see a lot of the Once Upon a Time sets.
And we did see Storybrooke very early on, and we haven't really seen Storybrooke in Once Upon a Time much this season. So I was excited to see that. I was the clock tower. I was like, oh my God, it's Storybrooke.
That was really exciting, and I was talking to Tiona about this earlier, and this goes into our whole timeline problem where they say present day, but from what I understood from looking at it, it looks like Storybrooke under the curse, because you still have the girl who is Cinderella there.
Yeah, and you know how we can figure this out? If we go back and watch, we need to freeze frame on the clock and see if it's still stuck at 8:15.
But the thing is, I noticed it was the same structure building as the clock, but we didn't see the clock. You know it's the same building, but just there was no clock there.
No clock
well,
there.
And you know what else I thought was interesting is the car that almost hits him was Emma's yellow bug.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's my guess is it's Neil driving the car, because I feel like so we know Neil had the car before Emma because then he gave it back to August and said, "Here, take this car." And I don't mean to be talking so much about that show, but it gives us some background on it. And so August gives the car back to Emma from Neil. So I feel like maybe Neil was Neil checking on Storybook, because if it was Emma, I'm like, if it was Emma, she would have gotten out of the car and be like, "Oh my God, why did I almost hit this guy? Like, what are you doing here in this town? Like, who are you?" She would have been very proactive about it versus Neil, who would just be like, "Oops, almost hit a guy."
Yeah.
I got away with that one.
Yeah, and I also, so we have Cinderella still in the town, so I feel like it's still under the curse, because we would have seen the knave in the Once Upon a Time plotline if he was there, because they seem to just know kind of who he is. They were like, "Hey,
they
what's
didn't
up?"
really question it, and he was walking towards a door that they had just locked.
Right.
So you think that they would have been like, "Hey, who are you? Why are you going towards Granny's when I just locked up for the night?"
Right.
But, you know, it's like, "Hey, looks like there's a storm coming. You should probably find shelter." And he's just like, "Think I will. I just stole your keys, and now I'm going to go in here." And
I like how they had a lot of locked doors. That's a that's a motif that obviously goes along with the Alice in Wonderland. She encounters a lot of locked places.
Yes.
So I like how they brought that element into the show.
And they zero in on the doorknobs too.
Oh yeah, totally.
I really enjoyed.
I was just expecting the doorknob to speak.
I know.
I was
You're just
thinking
like
too.
waiting. You're like, oh.
Nope. Nope.
But so then we have her back in the Asylum timeline, which seems to be like late 1800s. And they go out into the town, and the people in the town look like they're wearing late 1800s things, unless like cops wear like bowlers in England still, which I don't think they do. I feel like
They might.
I feel like because and this was my explanation for it, because the White Rabbit is like obsessed with time, I feel like his portal can be a time portal. So I feel like she actually is from 1800s England, but the knave was in like whatever year in the 90s it must be.
oh, maybe when he escaped from
Wonderland.
because, you know, he left because he did horrible things. When he escaped to a different timeline. And
Yeah.
because how did he end up in Storybrooke?
Yeah, and while we are talking about time, can we talk a little bit about like Alice's when she was younger?
Yeah.
That very quick scene of her as a kid, and I loved how the whole episode started with "Once Upon a Time." I thought that was a great thing.
Yeah.
But I just felt that little girl was really cute, but I felt that was kind of an awkward intro. I don't know. It seemed I don't know if it was like the actors that bothered me, but something about that opening like scene, and like when Alice is like, "Oh, I'm going to make," it was like an external monologue. It just seemed like forced, and like we know that she's gonna like try to do that.
I think they started with the little girl just to kind of, you know, pay a tribute to the movie. You know, she's dressed in the blue dress with the white apron around it. I think it was just like a kind of nod to how it all began, and then to give you a reason why her father thinks that how she ends up in the asylum. You know, her father thinks she's crazy because she's been gone for what seems like years.
Yeah.
You know, he's shocked to see her and she hasn't aged a day. And then, you know, she keeps telling all these stories and keeps disappearing like that. So I think it was just kind of to set up the story a little bit.
How long do you think she was gone for?
I don't think she was gone for like years, because like the dad still seemed young looking enough, and she didn't seem shocked like, "Oh my gosh, Dad, you're super old now." Like I feel like a little kid would like look at their dad and be like, "Oh, that's weird. You have now aged, and that's creepy." So I feel like her reaction to the dad says that maybe it was like months that she was gone, and long enough for, you know, a missing person to be considered dead, but not so long that it's like now the dad is like old and has like arthritis and
Yeah, and I think it just goes to show because the dad doesn't really say a specific time period too, like how long she's been, but we see Alice as an older woman now, and that just goes to show that her being a kid and her being an adult now, and there's a bunch of years that passed that she still believes this. So it makes her being in the asylum even more serious because it's prolonged for so long. the storyline has gone for years.
Yeah, let's talk about the Asylum. I think it's a classic story trope when you have a person that's traveling through different worlds to tell them they are crazy. And we know this from Once Upon a Time, when Emma comes to the town and Henry's like, oh, hey, like, everybody here is real story fairy book characters. And she's like, no, you're a little boy and you're delusional, and that's fine. But it was real. It was very real to them. And I think the thing that she's struggling with, that we sympathize as audience members, are that this is very real to her, and she's giving up on it just because she's had so much pain and been sitting here for years, thinks the person she loves is dead, so she's just thrown in the towel. She's like, I can't live with this anymore.
Yeah, I actually wrote down in my notes, because season 1 of Once Upon a Time was all about Henry being the crazy one who no one believed, and him trying to get people to believe his story. So before, she escaped from the asylum, and hopefully we don't end up back there, I was kind of thinking, oh man, is this going to be Once Upon a Time season 1? She's trying to convince people that her story is real, and is it going to be a repeat? But then I'm glad that they changed it up, because even though it is the same theme of, belief and fairy tales and make-believe, at least she has an out and gets to start her adventure a lot sooner than Henry got his.
Yeah, and I think belief is a common... when you associate it with fairy tales, belief is a common element in fairy tales, because it's like you have to believe, you have to suspend your disbelief. So you have to believe that these characters can fly, and you have to believe that this magical world exists. So it's almost, this intro is inviting us to come, because Alice is our protagonist, versus in Once, when Emma's technically our protagonist. So in this world, because we are with Alice, we're invited to believe automatically with her, which so let's talk about Alice's romance. So she is in love with a genie who we have learned now that there is more than one genie, because I thought Sydney Glass was the only genie, but apparently not.
I thought it was Robin Williams, personally.
I'm really glad she's not in love with a giant blue man. It just makes me feel better.
You know what, though? He has a great personality. You gotta give it to him.
He does.
He has multiple personalities, so he's actually crazy.
He sings some great songs. Maybe later Cyrus will sing for us, and that will make us feel better.
That would be awesome, but I loved how this genie, Cyrus, is also from Agrabah, like Sydney Glass. Like that genie.
It must be the place where genies live.
Agrabah?
It's a magical land.
It's a magical genie town, Agrabah.
It's like everyone gets a genie in
Everyone
Agrabah.
Gets a genie there.
You get a genie. You get a genie. That was my Oprah.
And this genie is hot, though. This genie is...
And he's more human than most genies are. Well, I guess, Sydney was pretty human, too.
Yeah, until he had all that weird stuff.
Yeah, because he was,
him.
in love with Regina and was literally did anything for her. And, these genies are very human.
Well, and remember that when Alice finds his necklace towards the end, they're like, oh, he's probably gone, and then the necklace is magic, and he is just a man, flesh and blood. So I wonder if that's if there's something that becomes a source of a genie's power and makes them a genie, or if they're just born that way.
Or if see, what I want to know is a back history of genies, because I want to know if Jafar gives them this necklace and they're you become a slave basically, to the genie system.
I thought the necklace, because he said to her that after he proposed, or didn't actually get to propose because she just said yes. He said
somebody's a little excited.
He said that their hearts were entwined now, so that whenever she was close, it would light up. So I didn't take it as being magical in trapping him. I took it magical in that's a sign of their love, and that they're finding each other, kind of how Snow and Charming do. We'll always find each other. I took it more meaning that, as opposed to that was what's keeping him locked down, because I feel like she freed him from being a genie.
Yeah,
that's why
she did too.
He got to choose to love her and choose to be with her.
Well, I think that's why they kind of fell in love, because she freed him, I think, and then they got to travel through worlds together, and then that's kind of their whole story. And then randomly on a cliff, Red Queen finds them.
Right next to the
What a
boiling
buzzkill.
sea.
Why are you hanging out next to the boiling sea? It can't be that romantic.
And yeah, why are you proposing on top of the boiling
Probably
sea?
really hot there, guys. I mean, you're probably sweating, and this is just not a cute look.
It's not.
A cute look when you're all sweaty and you're like, oh yes.
I know next week we're gonna find out the genie's backstory, and hopefully more of those questions will be answered. Like, did she free him? Like, was he enslaved to the genie system?
Yeah,
like,
and that's what I love about what they do, Addie and Adam, because Adam and Eddie. Wow, I don't know what I just said.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Just a
I
Friday
understood.
night, guys.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is that they do kind of take the liberties to start a storyline and then give you those flashbacks to fill you in.
To
But
fill
they
you
only
in the
fill you in
characters.
as much as they want you to know.
Right.
And then, they'll come back to it a couple episodes later and you'll be like, oh, okay, now that makes sense. So if you're new, if you haven't watched Once Upon a Time, the original, get used to this kind of storytelling because they kind of give you a little and then
Lost
take
as
it
well.
away. Yeah.
And there's a lot of similarities too, because going back to the heart necklace, when they're intertwined, if you go back to Once Upon a Time, Snow White and Prince, they have the ring that lights up every time they're near.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of similarities, even though they're different inanimate objects, but they keep crossing over in those things.
And Regina keeps hearts in her wall/mausoleum.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Well, and remember the Knave of Hearts said something about or Alice said to the Knave of Hearts, I got your heart back, so you help me get back mine. So I can't wait to see maybe his story is with Cora or with Regina or had some run-in with them, and that's why he was bad, because they were controlling him because they had his heart. I don't know. I like the Knave of Hearts.
Well, so let's move on to them, because they have, I feel like they're setting up a love triangle, because we have Cyrus, who, yeah, I mean, he's like attractive and cute, and I really like watching those two actors in the few scenes they had together, the actress who plays Alice and then Cyrus. You feel their chemistry, and you're like, okay, I know this is real. I know they have like real good chemistry, but the character we know more about at this point is the Knave. So you set it up where you're like, oh, these two people have this like beautiful chemistry, but then you start to get to know the Knave, and he's so much fun. And I definitely feel like he has a thing for Alice. So I think that they're setting up a sort of like triangle where you have her and the friend who she just sees as a friend who wants to be maybe something more, and then she's going after the love of her life.
It'll be interesting to see how this works out, because the Knave seems like a good guy, but I looked up what a Knave is because I'm a nerd. And
I love this. It's a history lesson.
It's awesome.
So,
we need that.
The Knave originally meant a male servant or a man of humble birth. But in more recent years, a knave is a base individual with no morals who will lie, cheat, and steal his way through life. It's an archetype displayed by mythical gods like Hermes, Raven, and Hermes, Raven, and Loki.
Loki,
Troy. as in
what?
Yes, or Thor's brother.
Oh no, Thor. That's what I meant.
Yeah, Thor's
Thor.
brother,
Sorry.
Loki.
Oh, sorry. I was actually getting excited about Loki, audience members, T-heads.
Yes. So it's interesting because he seems like a good guy who's trying to make up, but he has hinted to his past behavior in Wonderland, and it seems like he's a friend to Alice. Alice has helped him out in the past, but we don't know the extent of that story. So I can't wait to find out more, because, I mean, is he going to be this bad guy who... I mean, we saw a glimpse of it.
He stole the shoes.
He stole the shoes.
And I literally
he came back.
Right when she took it, it was almost like, okay, Alice, like she had made such a point to take off her shoes to climb that stinking tree. Yeah. And I was like, really, Alice? Really? Really?
And when you're making a deal with anyone, you don't show them where the prize possession is. Like, oh, you help me get here and I'll give you these wishes. But here they are hidden in this trap heel of my boot. You don't reveal where you're hiding it. You bring it out.
I feel though that so we know enough to know that she's a badass. Like, she broke out of that asylum.
What was with that fighting? I did not believe that. It's like, if you have the ability to knock out so many people all at once, why didn't you do that from the beginning?
I don't think she had a reason to before. She had nothing to fight for. She had given up on everything because everybody who she loved and who she thought loved her were gone. Her
Yes.
father, this guy, her whole family, obviously, if she's in this asylum at this point. And you saw her in that interview at the beginning with the doctors, just like denying it, but like it pained her so much to do it, but she was just like, I can't do this anymore. And that little glimpse of hope, I mean, again, with like hope, I think is another big thing, a big theme in these Once Upon a Time shows. It's just like everybody's always like, you have to hope, you have to believe. And so one glimmer of hope that her true love is alive, and she was out of there and don't get in her way.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I felt like that was like what lit a fire under her buns.
I would agree.
That's what lit a fire under her buns.
Fire! Wow, it's hot.
She got so excited about the prospect of him being alive, that she was just like, I'm gonna punch everyone.
And it is that belief that helped her get through it, because even when they make it to the Mad Hatter's house, shout out to the Mad Hatter, I got my hat.
Love your hat.
You know, even when they get there and see that Cyrus isn't there, she still believes, she has a feeling even before she finds the necklace in the grass outside. She's like, he's here, he's alive, I know it, I can feel it. When you're truly in love, you can feel it, you don't need proof. And
like you said, this is hope is a common theme, and it's really interesting to me because when they first made Once Upon a Time, they were saying that they were originally going to have the Prince Charming character just be dead. Like, they were going to, instead of being in a coma, he was going to be dead. And apparently there was like a revolt in the writer's room that was like, you can't just start it off devoid of hope, you know?
You can't kill the prince, like... They
no, it's dead.
That goes against all Disney beliefs of Prince Charming.
Yeah, well, see, it's because these people, they want to set up a very strong female action like character, which I respect, but at the same time, the argument against killing him off, which we agree with, is that if you have fairy tales and you set up this world, this isn't Breaking Bad where you know it's gonna come to some grisly end.
Whoa! Spoilers! Don't tell me.
Sad things happen in Breaking Bad. Spoiler alert.
But the thing is that having a Prince Charming or having a true love, that's mostly the driving force of the protagonist woman. That's why they're so strong and empowering, and that's what they fight for. They fight to find the true love, usually, in the Once Upon a Time.
Well, not Emma.
Franchise.
Yeah, I don't think Emma does that.
Well, Snow White definitely.
Yeah.
Snow White
definitely. But I think Emma fights for her son. That's like Emma's #1 priority.
And Regina does the same thing.
And Regina does the same thing. I don't think it has to be that, but I think that whatever that element of hope is in the person's life, Once Upon a Time is not setting up a show where they're just going to kill off all hope. This is one show on TV where people can watch and they can have hope, which is really nice. It's like there had been a lot of, and they were also saying that there had been a lot of shows up until the Once Upon a Time franchise that had a lot of really kind of like melancholy and dark and like not happy ending themes, and this was kind of like bringing that back into the mainstream. So the Knave, though, it's interesting that you read that description, because the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, the Knave is Captain Hook from Once Upon a Time. That's totally who he reminds me of.
Yeah, he does.
Because he plays into, like, you can tell that he has like Hook has a genuine affection for Emma. You can tell that. But there are still things going on where he's like, I have to service my own like personal needs. And so I feel that the Knave in this show, he has a thing for her, because when in that last scene when he turns to the rabbit and he was like, you gave her hope that he was alive and then you took it away. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
You could tell that he was really upset.
Yeah. Because I feel like I was gonna save this for news and gossip, but I'll just say it. Sophie Lowe and Michael Sosha, who play Alice and the Knave, they were on The View on Wednesday, and they were giving an interview, and Whoopi or someone asked them, "Hey, do you think a love triangle would ever happen? Like, you know, the chemistry between you two is so there. Could it happen?" They both said no. They said their characters are more like besties. They have each other's back, and that they're always gonna
well,
support
and
each other.
even,
So I mean, it could go either way.
When I was watching it, I felt like they have a very brother-sister type relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt a romantic thing with them. I'm trying to think, like another two characters. I don't think they have sexual tension like Hook and Emma. I don't think they do. I think they're more like maybe Emma and trying to think right now. I don't. But like who?
Oh, sorry. No. I'm just like throwing out
maybe
names.
what's his Pinocchio.
I felt they had
I
sexual
thought they were
tension too,
gonna-
though.
No.
I think that's.
I guess.
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
feel like there was I was definitely shipping Emma and August for the longest time. I was like, please. And then Neil came in, I was like, go away.
I don't see the sexual tension between Alice and the Knave only because we saw Alice and Cyrus first for the longest time. We saw that relationship kind of already build. They're in love, they're engaged. And then we saw Alice and the Knave. And then I didn't see it. I already was led to believe that she's in love with Cyrus, not the Knave.
Oh, I don't think she's in love with the Knave.
No,
I felt
or
that
like
he
any
was in love
sexual
with her.
tension or any feelings at all from the Knave.
Yeah, I
towards
felt like
Alice.
the Knave was kind of looking out for her, as in he's a guy who has a bad rap, and this is the one person who he's kind of been better for as a friend. So he's kind of trying to make sure she's protected because he knows that she's going through a hard time. But I mean, you never know where those feelings could lead down the line. If you get like 1 or 2 seasons in, then those feelings could turn into something else.
I also feel, though, that Disney is a little bit afraid of, or ABC is a little bit afraid of love triangles, because you notice in Once Upon a Time, the minute Neil and Emma get together, they kind of make the fiance evil automatically. So it's like, oh, okay, well, there's no more love triangle because she's evil. So I feel like they really try to like make it a little bit more neat. But I, as an audience member, definitely I'm shipping the Knave and Alice. I'm saying that right now.
So are you Team Knave?
I'm Team Knave.
Okay.
I'm Team Knave, and if there is a shipper name for Knave and Alice, please tweet it at me.
Navis.
because-
Boom.
Navis. I like
Navis.
that. Navis.
Oh, I'm on it.
I'm Team Navis. What is the shipper name for Alice and Cyrus?
Or Genie? No, it should be Cyrus.
It should
Yeah,
be
it should be Cyrus because
Cyrus.
there might be other genies.
Cyrus.
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 Cyrus isn't that a medicine?
Dialysis.
Okay,
Well,
we
tweet that
digress.
at us too. So in this world of Wonderland, that maybe we can take a brief moment to talk about what Wonderland looks like. Mostly a green screen.
Yeah.
Yep, all green screen.
All green screen, but we will say, because Jackie did point out to Marissa and I that the first episode of Once Upon a Time was entirely green screened as well. So hopefully after this first episode, we will see a little bit more sets and a little less green screen. I know Once Upon a Time still uses it a lot. They rely heavily on it,
Right.
but I think they found a good balance to control it unless they're dealing with like giants or something.
Right.
Then it looks pretty green screen heavy, but for the most part they've
Well, and it's like with television shows like this, it's, they don't have the big blockbuster movie budget to really make green screen look believable.
Right.
And I know, and it kind of works in their
Or
favor
the
because,
time.
Yeah,
The
and-
time
Yeah.
of production.
And it kind of works in their favor because obviously, like, these are make-believe lands. It almost looks like a storybook when they do the wide shots. But one of the things that really, really bugged me was the wide shot of the Red Queen's palace when they went in. It almost looked like they didn't finish the landscape. It looked so bland and fake, and just like it was like a rough sketch of the palace, like on somebody's computer graphic thing. It was very, took me out of it completely.
The last shot didn't take you out of it either. Where they're
They're
walking,
walking
down
down the
I was
yellow
like,
brick
the
road.
yellow brick
Yes,
green screen.
yeah. And I don't know, the Cheshire cat kind of threw me out a little bit. I thought that was a little, I don't know, he was creepy. And I
liked
get that
him.
it's darker and it's different, but the green screen on that kind of bugged me a
I
little.
like.
I
'Cause
like-
I looked like one of those YouTube videos of like cats shooting lasers or something. Like they just insert cat here.
I didn't like the green screen when they were on the marshmallow pit thing, and
when they were jumping
there
on
was
it.
all this the harsh reddish pink crimson lighting on them, and he's like, you can definitely tell that was practical lighting in filming. And there's a clear green screen, obviously, but I was like, that was just too forced.
I want to know what they were in with that. Like, were they really in marshmallow fluff? Because that looked like a lot of fun. If that's what they got to film
if they were
Can you
in
imagine?
Dude, that'd be awesome.
I bet that would
How
have
did you
been
die?
fun to
Marshmallow fluff.
It sucks.
But it is something that I think will improve. I know we're going to be spending our time in Wonderland, so a lot of things there are kind of hard to make, and you're going to need the green screen for a lot of things. But now that they have a budget, I mean, they were using Once Upon a Time sets.
Yeah.
Now they have their own sets and everything. I feel like it's going to be better.
I
And
definitely
granted,
agree with you.
they for the pilot, you usually have only a short time period to film it. And when we found out that they were doing the whole spin-off, that was during the whole pilot season. And that's the time when everyone's rushing to make pilots. So granted, I'm sure they didn't have as much time to film the first episode as they will with the other ones.
Yeah, they used like the Once Upon a Time crew for everything too, because Once Upon a Time was on a break for a week, and so they just came in and took over for like a week and
redressed
And they did,
the
you
set
know,
a little bit.
They did such a good job with the casting, I think. I'm very
they
pleased
did.
with everybody.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
like, you know, if that's what you really focused on for this pilot, I can, you know, throw you a bone and say, okay, just improve in the next coming episodes.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the main reason that, at least I watch these shows, and probably you guys too, is that they bring in characters from other fantasy worlds or from Disney movies that we know and from fantasy stories that we know, which is we're just there to see what the interpretation of the fantasy characters are. I mean, if I was watching this show for special effects, I wouldn't be watching the show.
And I do give them credit. It is Once Upon a Time. They have a television budget. Green screen is hard for anyone who's actually done it. I've done it
Very
myself.
hard.
It's a timely process, and when you only have a week turnaround to do it, like I give them credit for as much as they did for all the scenes that were green screen for this one episode. Like I'll give them a break because that's hard. I dare anyone to key as much as they did in one week.
Their graphics people obviously are working overtime for this, and props to you guys.
And the rabbit looks great.
The
I
rabbit
love
does
the
look cool.
rabbit.
The rabbit's awesome.
And that, I mean, that's the most important, like, CGI kind of
because
character.
he'll be
so,
around for
yeah.
a while.
I did like the Cheshire Cat, though. I thought
I did
the
too.
only thing that bothered me with the Cheshire Cat is I didn't think you could. There was a definite break in the shots with her not in green screen and with her in green screen.
Yeah.
It didn't. They didn't blend that very
Yeah.
well. Like there was a part when she was like laying on her back and like saliva dripped on her,
Yeah.
and I was like, this is obviously not like the cat is not up there. There's like no shadow or anything. So, but I thought the cat was cool, and I thought like the take they made on it of like, you know, things have changed here in Wonderland, and I have changed too. So I think, you know, that has a lot. It goes back to how Alice has changed as a person, because she's been away from Wonderland for a while, and I'm very interested to see how, if Wonderland has kind of gone evil, like if this queen has done something to this land that has turned it bad.
I also
similar
like
to
the
Regina.
I also like the sizing of the Cheshire Cat
Yeah.
because it started off big, and I'm going back to the Disney reference movie. You know, the Cheshire Cat is kind of small, like a normal cat size, but in this Wonderland, it's a completely different. It's bigger. It's a bigger threat than what we're used to. Because this is a completely different land. Things that we think shouldn't be as harmful are maybe more harmful than what we're led to believe.
Yeah. Does
And
anyone remember that TV show, Adventures in Wonderland?
Yep.
Okay, so this show,
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. You should look it up on YouTube. I'm sure they have it. But it reminds me kind of that, where we get to see Alice and all these different adventures, but this is like the darker take on that
this is definitely the
that
darker
morning
take.
show before
Yeah.
school. You know, when you're a kid. Now here's
is
the
like us
adult
as
version.
grown-ups
Yeah,
watching
it's
it,
the grown-ups,
yeah.
and this is the darker Wonderland, where, you know, things get real quick, and next thing you know, a giant cat's trying to eat you.
I do like the concept, though, of this cat was her kind of friend at one point, or somebody that she was friendly with, and he was like suddenly turning naughty, and so it's like she wasn't entirely expecting him to react against her. So there's something that the queen is doing to creatures in Wonderland that's making them react that way, which brings us to bad guys, which the queen I'm not entirely afraid of.
I know, me too. Like, I think it's, I don't know, maybe physique wise, she doesn't have the in the facial features,
Physicality, yeah.
she has soft features, and they're not really as strong or harsh that make me feel threatened by her.
I mean, unless you're going to be attacked by her giant pillow lips. Not really sure what's going to happen there. And she just seems to have the power of, like, throwing people out there. Like, but when the rabbit was in that room with her and he's, like, terrified, and I'm like,
what does she have on you? That's what I want to
she
know.
just has a bunch of cupcakes that she ain't going to eat. That's what's going on.
And a pretty red dress, I will give her that.
And she was wearing the same necklace Regina wore in the last episode of Once Upon a Time.
You are good.
I noticed that, and I wrote down, I was like, that is the same, because I noticed it when Regina was wearing it in a flashback last episode, and I was like, oh, that's a really pretty necklace. It kind of looks Indian influenced, and she had the same necklace on.
That's funny, because I was just going to say that her magic is similar to that of Regina's, where, you know, the flick of the wrist and he, like, leaps off. It's not anything directly that you don't see powers coming out of her.
Yeah. And the whole choking.
Yeah, the whole choking thing. I was like, it reminded me of Regina. I just wasn't fearful of her like I am of Regina.
Right. I was scared of her in the sense of Mean Girl. She looks like Regina George. And that's kind of like the terrifying, she just has like this mean girlness about her.
Yeah, she does.
Like Regina's like evil and scary. She's kind of just like I'm going to talk shit on you. I'm going to ruin your life that way. Like that's kind of what
like
she feels like to
me.
But
that's another thing too.
So we need a bus to kill her.
No. But that's another thing too, because in Once Upon a Time, Regina, we see both sides of Regina. We see her in the real world, present day world, as Regina just being a straight up biatch, and then we see her in the fairy tale land where she is queen and everyone fears her. But in Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, we only see the Red Queen in Wonderland. We haven't seen her human counterpart yet.
Well, when you did see her and Jafar have that interaction, she was straight scared. Like, that girl, and she couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So obviously Jafar is a lot more powerful than her, and maybe she is just more of a, like, kind of like a presence, just like a like a kind of a social type figure, more than like her having powers or anything.
And Jafar is all dressed in black. He has a serpent staff, and serpent usually represents evil, so I think there's just more physically going for Jafar to make us believe he's a bigger threat than the Red Queen.
Yeah, he comes in a shadow where you don't really see his face at first, but one of the things too that might not make her a big threat in Once Upon a Time, everyone knows the story of Snow White and the stepmother, so everyone knows the backstory, so you know why you should fear this woman. We don't have unless you've read the books before, you don't know the backstory of the Red Queen.
Well, the Red Queen is from Through the Looking Glass, which makes it, it's not even from the main Alice story. It's not that Through the Looking Glass is totally obscure, but all my like childhood remembrance references are from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. They're not really so much from Through the Looking Glass.
Yeah, it's the lesser known story, so we don't know what she's actually capable of yet. So I think that if we were starting this and it was the Queen of Hearts, we would know right away, okay, this girl's not to be messed with. But because it's the lesser known story, people still have to learn, and we didn't get a lot of her backstory tonight. We didn't get why she's after these two, why she's been after Alice and Cyrus for so long. You know, we don't know what she wants with them, and so it kind of makes it harder to fear her. But you have Jafar coming in on a carpet in the dark with his 1980s Jerry curl going on. That was
I think he had hammer pants on too.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. I said he looked like Michael Jackson from Thriller.
Agrabah is very 80s inspired.
Yes. The 80s just got to Agrabah.
And they are there and they are ready.
But yeah, you know, you have this other guy and we know his story. We know that movie that we've all seen as kids, you know, with the staff, and we know his story. So I think that's why we automatically fear these people as opposed to her.
I agree.
It is, like, anybody who has watched Lost, though, it's very strange seeing the character of Saeed now, the character of Jafar, and doing all these, like, arm motion thingies. It's just really, it's something completely different than what he's played before. So I'm very excited to kind of see how he does it in this type of character and being this evil. But it's going to take a little getting used to, I think.
Yeah, and the hair. I hope they get him a better wig for the rest of the show.
Or maybe a hat, like in the movie.
Yeah, or just cut it more even. We don't need the 80s style, like, almost mullet thing going on.
Here's my thing about Jafar. Jafar seems so powerful that everybody else in this world he's just bored with, because everything around him, like in this world of Wonderland, seems so like just insanely boring to him, and the only thing that he seemed interested in to me was Cyrus. So he's like with the queen, and he's like, okay, talk. Maybe I'll kill you, maybe I won't. I'm not sure. Like, he might be just too bored to wash his hair. I think that's a thing. Because
that is true.
Well, and it was weird the leverage that the Red Queen pulled on him. Like, I have a better idea of where they are than you do. And it was just like, he has a magic carpet. He could go fly around like Wonderland and figure out where she is.
She was pulling her mean girl thing out of her mean girl pocket. And she was like, I know things about things. And he was just like, bored now. I'm not even.
I can ruin Alice's life.
He's like, I'm not even excited enough to kill you at this point.
But that made me think of what you said earlier. Maybe, you know, she has something, or I think you said something about the cat and what the queen is doing to Wonderland, because maybe there's something about this place that she has her safety, her safety net, you know, where she has a lock on all the creatures in there, and we know the white rabbit's working for her, so she has the lay of the land a lot better than Jafar, and it's a big place, so you can get lost and you can change sizes, so she could be running around as like a tiny person and you'll never find her, but the Red Queen knows this, so she knows how to find people.
Yeah,
true, but like she does have more knowledge, but the Red Queen said, "I brought Alice in." And it's like, no, you didn't. The white rabbit did. Not
but
you.
She made him.
How?
And we don't know why, because he met with her afterwards, and she was like, "You're late." And then they go and they're having their tea, and she's like, "You have to keep an eye on them. Our deal's not done," because he says, "You said if I got her back here, I could," and she cuts him off. So we don't know what he was promised or who she's holding captive over him, maybe. But she has something on the white rabbit to make him go get his friend Alice and bring her back here.
I think there are enough. There's something about the power structure in Wonderland that makes people nervous, because we know that the Mad Hatter was nervous about the Red Queen, which is, I mean, like you said before, the Red Queen we know more about, so we're obviously like initially scared of her.
Yeah.
We know she takes people's heads.
Off with his head.
Or not the Red Queen, the Queen of Hearts. That's what I meant, the Queen of Hearts. And so, these subjects in this land seem to be initially like off and like worried about things.
They're very scared of the Red Queen, so I feel like we'll eventually get there. Just from first impressions, I wasn't that fearful.
Right.
Yeah, and we haven't really seen her true strength of her powers, because all we saw is like a wave of her hand or choking. We haven't actually seen like her conjure up any real magic, just forceful kind of thing.
I mean, Darth Vader could only use the Force, and he was freaking scary.
But he had a scary mask on, and he spoke like that was a terrible impression. That was the worst.
You're no
and
James
he has
Earl
a
Jones.
and he has a lightsaber.
Yeah,
But
if you wanna-
we digress.
We digress. The lightsaber, yes. Maybe the Queen will pull out some type of lightsaber.
Disney owns Star Wars. Or
I
ABC
know.
owns Star Wars. So
Maybe
awesome.
Darth Vader will like partner up with Jafar, and they'll all be using the Force together.
Hey, if Frankenstein can make his way into
Right?
Snow White's story,
agreed.
the ends limit.
Or
you know.
Darth Vader could be like, this is how you really do a chokehold.
I want to see Iago. I'm very sad that maybe Jafar is so bored because Iago's missing and he's lonely.
Well, and it's kind of funny that Jafar, like, how does he have the magic carpet? That's Aladdin's carpet. Like,
Yeah, there's
What
a
happened
lot
to
of
Aladdin?
what happened to Aladdin? Why are there so many genies? Like, there's a lot of backstory that we need to figure out here.
And it goes back to, you know, them meshing so many stories from the start that it's kind of hard to see where they're going to go, but it's kind of exciting to see what new places they're going to take all these characters, because once upon a time it's not laid out flat, but the stories are they don't cross over as much as, you know, Alice is in love with the genie from Aladdin.
Yeah.
You know, those stories don't make sense to any of us outside of this world right here. So it's going to be exciting to see, you know, maybe Jasmine and Aladdin aren't together in this world. You know, maybe they're with other people. So I don't know. I'm excited to see. I don't want it, but like at this point, anything's possible.
That's true. And they
Jasmine could have ended up with Jafar.
Slut.
But They also mentioned the quick line, mermaids and pirates, so they alluded back to Neverland, and as we know, Once Upon a Time, Neverland's completely different than what we're
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, good point. Peter
So-
Pan is evil.
Yeah, so it goes to show that they really are taking liberties with this show.
Yeah.
And I hope that maybe we'll see some other worlds. Like, I know this is base set in Wonderland, but just like Once Upon a Time is base set in Storybrooke or the Enchanted Forest, maybe we'll see, because we know that she's traveled through the land, so maybe we'll see her later in the season or in other seasons.
And do you think Agrabah is a separate land, or do you think it's part of
because
another
she
land?
said this is my world.
But did you guys also notice when Jafar flew off, there was kind of these other, it reminded me of Mario World, because there was these other little, floating mushroom
Yes, there
kingdoms
were.
over there. So I don't know if that's part of Wonderland or if he's flying off to over there is Agrabah and over here is somewhere else, because it was these little floating worlds that he was kind of floating off to. So I want to know what that's all about.
I want to believe that
That's
Agrabah
Pandora.
is a completely different world too, because, and we keep referencing Once, but if you go to Once, you have to go through portals to go into a different land. So I think they're kind of going the same way here, where Agrabah is a completely different land.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
agree.
mean, but in the Enchanted Forest, there's a lot of different kingdoms that so who knows?
And maybe, it's like Super Mario, where it's like you get a rat tail or a raccoon tail and you just fly up there.
But I mean, it was just these floating cities up there, and
It's like
I
Pandora.
was like, what is up there? You can't quite make it out, and they showed it twice throughout the episode, so
Yeah.
something else is up there.
Yeah, there's something going on with those floating Mario buildings. Okay, any last thoughts, ideas?
I do like their. We touched a little bit. I do like their interpretation of the White Rabbit.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They really gave him a lot of human personification. He's walking,
Yeah.
he's talking, and I found it interesting how they introduced the White Rabbit to all the non-believers already, straight off the bat.
yeah.
When he's trying to convince Alice that no, she's not hallucinating or anything, this is all real. But he reveals himself in the real world with other regular humans.
He doesn't care.
Yeah, he
I
doesn't care.
feel like though that's consistent with the original story, because the first person she sees going down to the rabbit hole is the White Rabbit. So I feel like that might have been a nod to the original story where Alice follows the White Rabbit down the rabbit hole. So he probably is just like a honey badger. He just don't care.
Yeah, that's true. But yes, the White Rabbit is usually in the real world. That's how Alice follows him. But the fact that other human beings actually acknowledge that the
that
White
they saw
Rabbit was
him.
there, I don't think we see that in the regular Alice in Wonderland
No,
story.
no, I agree with that.
And another thing I picked up on, the knave, when he steals her shoes and Alice is at the top of that tree, she calls him Will. So he has a second name. And then she calls him Will again when she finds the necklace, and she goes, Will, Rabbit, come here.
I thought she
Calls
was
him-
just slurring her words. I was
Nope.
like, are you being British and I can't understand you?
Put the subtitles on, and I was like, did she just call him Will? Yep, showtime. So, like we've seen on Once Upon a Time, people with their two names and their two identities, maybe he has another name. Maybe he started as a male servant, a man of humble birth, and then when he
He's
became
definitely
the
a man
knave
of
of
humble birth.
when he became the Knave of Hearts is when he became, someone with no morals who will lie, cheat, and steal his way through life.
It's true.
Dun,
And
dun,
we definitely know though that Alice as a character is more trusting than our heroines, or well, she's more like a Snow, where she's more trusting than an Emma, and because so there was the line where they tell her you're risking your life for someone who doesn't believe in you, and she's gone through so much pain, and so much pain that she's willing to go through electroshock therapy, which is what I was assuming that they were referencing.
What did you call it, Marissa?
Um,
You shouted it like 10 times during the episode what he was going to do to her mind to
oh,
erase it.
a lobotomy.
Yes.
Oh, lobotomy, like
Lobotomy.
Asylum. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was thinking like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless.
I was completely thinking
They're gonna be
lobotomy. I was like, they're in asylum. That's mental erasing rather than like brainwashing.
Yeah.
Just like completely erase it.
Yeah. So she's been through I mean, granted, she didn't have that procedure of what
She
any
signed
procedure.
off on it.
Yeah, but she signed off on it. She's been through so much pain, and I feel
not reading the contract.
I feel like she's definitely, as our heroine, she's in more of like a fragile place, that she's more willing to trust a lot of these people who she used to trust and might not be so trustworthy.
Yeah.
Well, do you guys want to get into news and gossip?
Yes. I don't have any, but
I kind of used mine up, but the interview on The View, it was on October 9th. It's really cute. It's only like 5 minutes long. You can tell that Sophie and Michael their chemistry that you see on screen is apparent off screen as well.
Shipper chemistry that is exploding off the screen.
They were just so super cute together. They both kind of gave that face when the subject of them being shipped together. They both looked like, ew, no, they're like besties, and they're playful. They seem like fun people. This is their U.S. television debut. They're both done a lot of stuff over in the UK, but this is their first time on like American television starring roles. So that's fun. And Michael actually admitted that he's never read Alice in Wonderland, so he didn't even feel like, hey, I should do the research for this role. Nope. More mad respect for you for that, because I haven't read it yet either.
Well,
but I plan to.
Knave.
Well, and some actors like that too, because then it allows them to interpret the character themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I have another piece of news and gossip. Jennifer Goodwin, and who plays Snow, and the guy who plays Charming, whose name is
Josh
Dallas.
They got engaged.
Yes,
So
they
are
did.
officially engaged, and I know that's kind of more Once Upon a Time dynasty in Wonderland, but yeah.
You're just so excited.
I
so
was so
excited.
I mean, it's like a
It's cute.
It's like a real life fairy tale.
Yeah, it's really cute. Predictions?
Yeah.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
I'm gonna make a prediction that is really more of a desperate plea. Please put the Mad Hatter on this show. I really love Sebastian Stan, and I know he's really busy, but I love him. The end. Your prediction.
My prediction, I got really excited and I wrote it down. After you said that the Red Queen and Regina had the same necklace, their powers are similar. What if they're sisters?
Oh my god!
Yep.
I got so excited I had to write it down. So I'm predicting that.
Or stepsisters.
Or half
one's
sisters.
blonde, one's completely blonde, one's brunette.
And then the mom's
so-
kind of like in between, but you can't really tell. 'Cause she has all
I
that
put
plastic
down
surgery.
sisters or half sisters, stepsisters,
or friends.
or friends.
Good friends.
Yes.
Besties.
Glenda and Elphaba, they were friends. They were blonde. One was
And
brunette.
And then that
What?
crazy ass chick, Dorothy, came and ruined everything.
I know.
Damn it, I would not be surprised if we saw Dorothy show up.
Well,
They
there's
in
a
the
lot
Once
of
Upon a Time book,
Yeah.
there are flying monkeys.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I especially after we saw the Yellow Brick Road,
yeah,
basically in
Kind of.
Wonderland. So I would not be surprised if we ran into Oz at some point.
That was my prediction.
I agree with that. I think that's a great prediction because I think Cora is I think the reason that the Red Queen and Jafar are working together has something to do with the Queen of Hearts, aka Cora. I feel like because obviously she is probably the most powerful person besides the Dark One that goes across these worlds. So I feel like it might be a power struggle or something that they need each other to get rid of Cora. So I don't know. I just love Cora. I just think she's great. And I'm
So
really
you're begging for Cora, and I'm begging for Sebastian. You got that? You got that?
Cora's awesome, so I don't blame you.
yeah.
I think because we're kind of unsure about the timeline and whatnot, what happened from when Alice was first in Wonderland, and then her second return back when she's older, and you know how we saw the Cheshire Cat is a kind of different person. They're strangers now. I think we'll see some like flashbacks of what happened in the in-between period, which will fill a lot of gaps in the story plot lines.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm also wondering now that we found out that you can travel through time with these worlds? Maybe they're going to start using time travel on the other show, on Once Upon a Time, and that might be how they can prevent the curse. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't know how I feel about that. I want them to keep this completely separate than Once Upon a Time.
I think
don't
they
think they
are.
can.
Well, it seems like they are for at least this first season. They're trying to not. I mean, they did the cute nod in the beginning that we're all excited about, but I think they're trying to establish it as its own show before they do too many crossovers.
Yeah, with the storylines.
And we'll
'cause that
try
can be
not
fun.
to constantly talk
Yeah.
about Once Upon a Time.
This is our
But
reference.
yeah,
This is
but
our
right
only
now,
reference.
Once Upon a Time is
Yeah.
the only thing we really have to go off of, other than the separate storylines in general. But we have once as a reference.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that was fun, guys.
Yeah.
I can't wait for
Where
next
can
week.
they find you guys? Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the Tiona Hobson.
You can find me on Twitter at KeetinM33 and on Instagram at Keetin33.
So difficult.
I'm gonna change it.
Marissa.
You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Serafini TV.
You can find me on Twitter at 123Jackie_B and on Instagram at 123JackieB, no underscore. And no, I'm not going to change it. I'm making it difficult.
Difficult people.
Just have to remember your underscore.
From Bing.com, executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.